Did you know that the Florida Gators are going to start the 2024 season 1-0 against the Miami Hurricanes?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I really wish that Miami and Florida matched up every single year, but since it happens once in a blue moon or twice in a blue moon, if you get a home and home, it makes me appreciate this matchup. And I always appreciate when I get a chance to team up here with Brandon Olsen, who, despite the content, not being something I'm very interested in, he does a fantastic job hosting Locked On Gators. Brandon, how are you?
Fantastic. And yeah, if you weren't a Canes fan, you'd probably be my best friend. But sorry, just some people have flaws that I can't get past.
Yeah, so doing a crossover episode, even this far out from August 31st, which is when the Miami Hurricanes will travel to the swamp to take
Salute.
on the Gators in Gainesville. We had to get together because if nothing else, Brandon, both of our fan bases, Florida fans and Miami fans, I'm sure would like an update on the offseason, how the other team is doing. Now for Florida, and I did shout out to you guys that was a good. You've had some good ads in the portal, including Jason Zandamela, who's somebody Miami definitely kicked the tires on when he first entered the portal. Talk to me about Florida's roster and the trends you've seen in big storylines through the spring.
Yeah, I think that the big storyline I'm picking up here is that defensively they're going to be significantly better. I mean, changed almost the entire defensive coaching staff outside of the outside linebackers coach, edge room. And I mean, I know that I don't put too much weight in spring games. I know that's nonsensical to do because last year we watched the spring game and everyone's like, "Oh, Florida's defense is going to be really good," and well, they stunk it up. But this year's spring game, it just seemed a lot more organized to me, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And that's kind of what popped to me. Is just they seem like a better coached unit defensively, and improving there is going to be a big help there. And also having Graham Mertz. Anytime you can have a quarterback come back for year two as a starter, your expectations are automatically picked up a little bit. So for me, those are the biggest things with the Florida Gators as to just what's going on with them and keeping most of their roster despite losing a few of the top guys.
Yeah, for Miami, it's really been an offseason of urgency, and I think that a lot of that came from the fact that when the Hurricanes were able to acquire Cam Ward from the transfer portal to become the team's quarterback for this year, what I saw happening was, and obviously Ward was very coveted. Miami wanted him badly, but I think he actually exceeded their expectations from the time he entered the facility and was even better in spring than I think they expected he could be. And so I think that's now really put an emphasis from Mario Cristobal and company to try to be even more aggressive in the transfer portal to Mac, because Miami's got Cam Ward for 1 year. Want to maximize that 1 year. It's why Miami went out and added Damian Martinez to their running back room, who is likely going to be the starting running back on August 31st against Florida. Why they added Sam Brown from Houston as either high quality wide receiver depth or a guy who can definitely compete to be a starter in that room. And Miami the defense is still under construction. I think Jalen Alderman, the linebacker from Louisville, was a solid add, and Diani Hill at cornerback is someone who, is already very familiar with the defensive backs coach at Miami, who coached him at Marshall, and Lance Guidry, the defensive coordinator, coached him there a couple of years ago. And so it's really been an offseason of transformation. And I think that there's obviously a common thread for both of these teams underachieved last year. Now that, you can argue about the degrees of underachieving. Miami fans will think about the knee that wasn't taken. Florida fans will think about that awful stretch to end the year and not being bowl eligible. But for both of these teams, improvement is a must. And Miami is working on a lot of that improvement, Brandon, through acquisitions they've made in the transfer portal. And so, we'll have to see how quickly they can establish continuity and how quickly they can establish something together. But I do think Miami, and you have to prove it on the field. I make no proclamations. You have to prove it on the field. But I think Miami sees an opportunity with Cam Ward, if you can surround him with the right pieces to try to compete for an ACC championship and try to get yourself at least in that picture for top 12. And I think it's why we've seen such an aggressive offseason from Miami when it comes to roster management and transfer portal.
Yeah, Cam Ward is someone that I've been very high on for a long time. When he was winning the Jerry Rice Award for top FCS freshman at Incarnate Word, I remember I interviewed him then. I've known him since then. He's great. But for me, the main thing is just week one. It's tough to gel with all that, especially like going through all the transfer portal, adding Damian Martinez in the spring portal, adding Sam Brown
Yeah.
in the spring portal for a quarterback. It's just tough. But Cam Ward is someone that I look at as the X factor also for Miami, or at least that's from on May 3rd. I look at him as the X factor just because he's your experienced starting quarterback. I get it, it's his first year at Miami, it's his third school in 3 or 4 years. So I understand that there's a lot going on here with moving pieces, but he's still your experienced starting quarterback that's had that much time. It's just week one in one of what I think the Swamp is a top two environment in college football, right up there with LSU and Death Valley. And I think those are the top two areas. So just going in there is really where things get messy. But I do love that both fan bases right now on May 3rd seem to be riding a bit of like an emotional high of just like, oh, the
Yes.
season's coming up. Miami's doing a lot in the transfer portal. Florida kept a lot of their guys, and they've got Graham Mertz and DJ Lagway and all that stuff. And August 31st I'm going to assume this is a night game. So at about 11 Eastern time, one fan base is just going to absolutely lose their minds. Like no matter
Yes.
which way it goes, one fan base is just gonna be like, fire him. I'm done.
Yes.
No matter who lose that game, they're just gonna lose their minds. And I'm ready for that anticipation. Just no matter who it is, I'm an agent of chaos here. So no matter who it
Yeah.
is, I just love that one fan base is gonna lose their freaking minds late August 31st.
Now, I got a question for you because I think people will try to create these narratives for the head coaches of both the teams that we cover, right? There's been, and these are outside narratives about Mario Cristobal and about Billy Napier, because I know that like one of the narratives from outside of Gainesville is the leash is short, that, you know, a catastrophic loss or a bad season and Florida's going to move on. Is that, and I can talk about that perception for Cristobal as well, but we'll start with Napier. Is that perception reality? How short is the leash this year?
Realistically, I believe that if the Florida Gators win less than 5 games, he's 100% gone. I think
Right.
if you win 5 games, but you've improved foundationally, then they will keep you just for the sake of keeping DJ Lagway. And if you're bowl eligible, you're good, which is, but like, I want to make this abundantly clear because I say this a lot and people get mad at me for saying that. I don't support that thought process. I think this is the University of Florida, and you should be much better. But realistically, where Florida currently is as a program, where their roster is, what their schedule looks like, I think that's the internal approach to things. I think it should be win more games or you're gone. But I do think that they're trying to go around this, and also there are some, um, we'll say, murmurs about that buyout, which kudos. Absolutely bent over Florida's administration with that buyout. 85% of the remaining contract clause, or remaining contract value at any point if he's fired without cause. And there are some rumors that that's going to help keep him longer because that's such a big buyout at this point that they're not going to want to pay that while they're still paying Dan Mullen for another year. And then wanting to pay a next head coach is going to be a lot of money tied up in 3 head coaches.
Yeah, in the case of Mario Cristobal, because they're obviously so like some people, like national guys and fans, like after the Georgia Tech game, they were like, "How can you even keep this guy? You should have fired him after that game." The reality is, with a poor season, the season can get warm. I think it would take a catastrophic season to actually start even considering that buyout, and I don't expect a catastrophic season. I think Miami's going to be pretty good this year. It's just a matter of how good. But like even a lot of Miami fans would think, hey, like anything below 9 wins would be a disappointment. Anything below 8 wins would be terrible. I think if it was something like, 8 wins or fewer, I think there would be some disappointment, but that's not fireable. And a lot of it, two things. with the way the foundations are being built. Now, if a really poor season might also mean, really hurts your recruitment, and it would mean guys may want to leave in the transfer portal, that's a possibility. But I think considering the foundations that Coach Cristobal is building, it would take a lot for him to be on the hot seat this year. And then something you talked about in Florida, the buyout is also, it would have to be disastrous in Miami to consider buying Cristobal out in year 3 of a 10-year, $80 million deal that he signed. Like, it's just not, it would have to be, a season where you're not bull eligible and with, locker room mutinies and stuff like that. And again, I don't expect any of that stuff to happen. I'm just saying it would take something like that for a coaching change. But, I want to talk, Brandon, about what a Florida win would look like on August 31st, what a Miami win would look like on August 31st, why the Gators win, why Miami wins, and if there are any concerns about these rosters. So this is an epic crossover that we should do more often. Same way that Miami and Florida should play each other more often. We got to do more of these Gators, Canes crossovers. Keep it locked right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Oh, guys, I already know you're keeping it locked to Monopoly Go. Game off, okay? We got to pause to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with. Hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or on the App Store. Game on. Guys, it's always game on with eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Got an epic crossover episode here. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He is Brandon Olsen from Locked On Gators. Miami will take on the Gators in Gainesville Saturday, August 31st, opening up the season for both teams. Brandon, why did the Gators win this matchup, and what does a Gators win look like?
I think that the main reason that I think the Florida Gators will win this game is there's kind of two things. One, that quarterback continuity, Graham Mertz coming back for year 2. Historically, quarterbacks coming back for year 2 tend to have significantly improved years than they did in year 1 with the new program. Even if they were middling at their previous spot, like Graham Mertz was at Wisconsin, I have no problem admitting that. But you look at guys like Bo Nix was terrible at Auburn. Michael Penix Jr. was pretty good, but constantly hurt at Indiana. We've seen that happen quite a bit with quarterbacks that transfer, end up starting and improving throughout their time at a program. So I think having year 2 of Graham Mertz is big. And then also, I don't mean to be a jerk. I just can't see a team building as much as Miami's building through in this spring portal be ready and gelled by August 31st. And it's simple as like, I think what Miami's doing in the second spring portal, Sam Brown was a guy that you can go back and check the tape on Locked On Gators. I was saying the second he hit the portal, I said that Florida should go after him. I think he's a good player. I think he'd be an immediate contributor for any team he goes to. Damian Martinez is someone that I've been a fan of. Honestly, I was just like, hey, don't go to Kentucky, because that seems like a thing where he'd go to Kentucky and Ray Davis us. Yeah. And I just didn't want that. So Damian Martinez, very good running back as well. I mean, I was going to say Florida got lucky he got hurt in the bowl game, but also they lost 30-3. So maybe not so lucky. So I love what Miami's doing as far as building a roster through the spring portal, like the talent they're bringing in. But it's a really hard sell for me to say a team that's relying on that right now is going to be ready by August 31st.
Yeah, I think your point is taken, but I think part of what you said though is actually a reason why I think Miami will win this game, because Cam Ward, to me, he wasn't a spring addition. Ward has been at Miami since January, and he's done an exceptional job. In my humble opinion, and many share this with me, has done an exceptional job of integrating with the team. This guy, you can tell he's approaching this coming season because he knows this is his final NFL audition, and wasn't getting the sort of draft feedback he wanted last year, which is why he decided to come back and play in college one year. I think Cam Ward has basically made the decision that for the next however many days, 365 or a little bit under that, football is his entire life, outside of maybe a few fishing trips, but he's just basically spending all of his time in the facility. He learned his teammates' names, all 84 of them, within 24 hours of arriving at the facility. He's basically bled, sweat, and hopefully not cried, but the old cliche goes like that with his teammates all day, every day. And it was also, I believe, a pretty easy transition so far when it comes to the installation for the offense, because it's somewhat similar to what he was working at his previous stop in Washington State. So I think the transition for Ward is going to be smoother than people expect. I see him building the chemistry with Xavier Restrepo and Isaiah Horton and some of his other top pass catchers. What you say, though, there is validity absolutely to having a lot of roster turnover. So I guess my hope would be, if your quarterback, your new quarterback, is not an issue there and he hits the ground running, he can set the tone for the rest of the team. Because I think for Miami, there are fewer question marks right now on the offense than there are on the defense. We'll talk about that when we get to concerns, but I think this is a game where that sort of two-headed attack from Cam Ward and Damian Martinez can set the tone and win this football game. And yes, Martinez was a spring transfer. I think the learning curve for running backs is usually a little bit shorter than it is for a lot of other positions. That's one that you worry about least. So I'm hoping, Martinez has some of that Ray Davis in him for this matchup. Now, I know you can't compare year by year, and you talked about the way Florida has emphasized and improved their defense, right? But I do look at a defense last year that was 79th against the run. I could see Miami having an opportunity to set the tone there with a physical offensive line and a physical back like Martinez if Florida hasn't fixed that. But what I like so much about Miami's offense, Brandon, is it's become a pick your poison scenario. Do you stack the box to try to slow down Martinez? Do you go with a light box to focus more on Ward? I think you have an opportunity to beat teams either way. And so I think this team is going to be jacked up for the start of the season. Obviously, first game of the year can absolutely be a wild card, especially on the road. But I think Miami's offense can set the tone for this game. And I think Miami can win a shootout is kind of the way that I look at that playing out.
Yeah, I could see it going either. Again, like a lot of Florida's defense depends on how they really translate to this year.
Right.
We've seen guys get healthy, like Shamar James missed half of the season last year because he got hurt in pregame warmups. You brought in Asa Turner to be a starting safety who just started for Washington in the national championship, which both teams bringing in Washington defensive backs this cycle is a weird coincidence to have there. But at Florida, bringing in Asa Turner with Will Harris, who recruited him at Washington, coached him there. I think Florida significantly improved their defense, and I'm really looking forward to watching how they handle Miami's team. Because for me, when I think of Miami's offense, I don't think of it's a pick your poison between Cam Ward, Damian Martinez, whoever it may be. I think of they're going to have a good offensive line. And that, or an improved offensive line, a better offensive line than probably Florida is going to have it. So Florida needs to win those trench battles there. And I think adding someone like Joey Slackman, like they did from Penn, I think having Cam Jackson back for year two, Florida, they dismantled Tennessee's offense last year. And a lot of it came down to Cam Jackson just manhandling in the middle of the offensive line. And so I think that Cam Jackson can do that in a lot of games this year as just a pure nose tackle. So, and linebacker room improved, the defensive line improved, makes your linebacker job easier. So I am looking at Florida's defense to try to slow down Miami. I don't know if they're if they're going to get into a shootout. I think for me, Miami's offense has turnover at key positions, which again, like Cam Ward, great player. I'm very confident that he'll work out. But week one, will you be on that page in a live setting, in a live game setting in the swamp? Like the swamp,
Right.
I don't think can be overlooked. You look at Utah 2022 coming to the swamp. I think Utah was a better football team, but going into the swamp is a tough game to win there. They show out well, and I mean Miami's fans don't show up for their own home games, so I doubt that they're going to show up for a game in game. I'm just going to say that one. Just to throw that one at you
Florida
guys.
going to have 11 guys on the field, though. I mean, how?
Probably not. But do they need it? I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm just saying, might be able to do it with 10. But I think that Florida's going to have a little better success slowing down teams this year. I think a lot of it also is just you could throw the ball at any cornerback you wanted last year. And maybe you could do the same against Jason Marshall again this year. Jason Marshall last year allowed 23 yards per catch. Jalen Kimber allowed about 22 yards per catch, although Jalen Kimber's gone now. So I think Florida improving in your secondary helps you a lot. Improving in your defensive line room helps you a lot. I think this is a defense that improves on every level. You lost Princely Umanmielen, who I still stand by was the best edge rusher on the team, best front four player on the team. But I think you improved your defensive line throughout, and that alone will kind of replace that production. So I think if Florida's going to win this, you have to just slow down Miami's offense. I don't think Florida wants to get into shootouts. They don't do that. Billy Napier doesn't get into shootouts. That's just not what he likes to do. And so I think for Florida to win this game, you got to keep Miami under 24. I think if you could do that, I think you can win this game for the Florida Gators.
Well, let's talk about potential roster concerns. Now, Miami, as you've hinted at, is still not finished actually adding players. At least they don't appear to be in the transfer portal. At the time when we record this, Miami is trending well with Simeon Barrow from Michigan State, the defensive tackle. We'll see if he does arrive or not. That would be a big addition if they can get him. They're also trying to get another defensive back because they really need a starting nickel, and I think that's why they're looking at D'Angelo Pons from James Madison. So Miami's not done, but they're definitely – I've got more concerns on paper with the defense than the offense. Like I look at overall depth on defensive line and depth in the defensive secondary. I think Miami is very much set at linebacker, but on those other two levels of the defense, I think that there are obviously it's still under construction, which is not always a great thing. Cause like you talked about, then you're trying to build very quick chemistry and continuity once those guys arrive. So that's one of the reasons why I think a shootout is not out of the question. Because I think Miami can score and perhaps Miami gives Florida opportunities to score with certain areas of their defense needing to gel. So those are my main roster concerns at this point. And then obviously when you're talking about, from Miami's perspective, a big road game in one of the toughest environments in the country, that does come to play as well. Because I am a firm believer that in certain environments, that home field advantage, that's worth points, right? And you and I both know this as gambling enthusiasts, that certain home environments are worth points. And I think that the swamp is worth a few points to Florida. Not to say Miami can't still win the football game, but it's going to take more of an effort on the road, I believe, than it would at home. So any concerns on your side?
I think for me, it's still the offensive line at this point, which is an embarrassing thing to say in year 3 when you've had the same offensive line coach for 3 years, changed your second offensive line coach, which don't get me started, but changed your second offensive line coach this season with Jonathan DeCosta replacing Darnell Stapleton, who went to the Washington Commanders. But Austin Barber last year was bad. I don't know if he's a long-term left tackle. I know he was hurt last year. I don't care. He was on the field playing poorly. Means nothing to me if he was hurt or not. It's just the results were not good. You brought in Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon coming over from San Diego State, who had a lot of success there. This is the SEC. It's different. Damian George moving to right guard wasn't good in the spring game. Hopefully he'll be better now. I think that adding Jason Zandamela this week gives you some versatility because Rod Kearney, who's currently your backup center, I think can then move to guard. And I think he can push Damian George for the starting spot there at right guard. And so for me, it's just about piecing things together. Going into spring ball, I was optimistic on this offensive line because I felt like there were probably 8 names, and we knew that 5 of those 8 would be starters and 3 more would be quality backups. And then Austin Barber missed the entire spring with that offseason surgery that he had. And you're still trying to shuffle things around. And that's not a spot that I'm comfortable to be in early May. That shouldn't be a thing when you've had the spring session come and go. And there wasn't turnover on the offensive line through the spring. So for me, it's the offensive line still getting together and gelling for an offensive line that was terrible last year. Just going to call it what it is. It was awful. I could have been out there playing and would have had a higher PFF grade than some of these guys. So I'm just saying it was bad. So for me, it's still the offensive line. I do feel a lot more comfortable with the defense. Corner is the area that I'm most concerned with, just because Jason Marshall Jr. was terrible last year. Hopefully, will improve this year. And then opposite him, it's going to be a young player, and that's all we know. It's going to be a young player trying to replace Jalen Kimber, which won't be hard, but we've seen bad corner play in Gainesville. So it's just about replacing that other outside corner.
Yeah, and it's similar, for Miami, the constant at corner is Darryl Porter Jr., who had a really good season last year, and he's expected to be kind of the stabilizing force there. We really like the safety that Miami added from Washington, Mish Powell, and one of the reasons why I think Miami really needs a starting nickel is because if they don't find one, Powell will probably start in that star position, nickel position, where I think they'd prefer to add someone else who can start there to allow Powell to play safety, and then you hope another solid cover corner emerges, whether it be Damari Brown in his second year or perhaps Diani Hill, who you brought in from Marshall. But there are definitely some question marks as to how that defensive secondary is going to shake out in Miami. But I'll tell you, folks, Brandon and I will be talking a lot more about it because we're both going to be in Gainesville for that game. We're going to do perhaps a pregame and a postgame crossover episode, maybe before and after that. And Brandon, we got to come up with something, and people can help us out with this in the comments before August 31st. Whoever's team loses, like when Miami beats Florida, you got to do your post-game show in Miami gear. And if by some miracle Florida pulls it off against Miami, I can do my post-game in that ugly Gator gear. But we got to come up with something like that, because the troll game between us has to stay strong between now and August 31st.
Yeah, like I told you, someone messaged me and they're like, "Hey, can I talk trash to him?" And I was like, "We do it in work group chats, so go ahead. If you want to talk trash, go ahead." I also like that you said if by some miracle Florida wins, because Miami could be up a few points with, I don't know, 15 seconds on the clock, and I'll still feel comfortable because I know that you guys have a history of screwing that one up right there. Mario Cristobal, he's got a tendency to choke, so I'm fine. I won't even be sweating at that point. I mean, Florida's going to win by 8, but still.
I hope Billy has that LinkedIn jobs profile spruced
There
up
we
for
go.
September
There
1st.
we go. Been a while. Been a while.
Well, listen, I appreciate everyone supporting both of our channels. And guys, in all reality, Brandon does a fantastic job. We work really hard here on Locked On Canes. He works very hard on Locked On Gators. So make sure you support both shows, even if it means trolling. We consider that support. So if the Gator fans want to troll me, if the Miami fans want to troll Brandon, we welcome that sort of behavior. And we will talk to you guys again in the build-up from Miami at Florida, August 31st, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.